Hello YouTube, Tony Walker 23 here, and it's October 31st, 2019, and you know what that means. It's been 502 years since the Reformation. A lot of people are celebrating that in a different way, like my kids and my wife went to the mother-in-law's tonight and got some candy. While they were doing that, I was supposed to be working on schoolwork and some of my college class reading and paper and this, that, and the other, but as a youth pastor, had a different day happen and something happened crazy and I had to take care of a situation. Nothing bad or sinful or anything, just a logistical matter for something we've got coming up for our church people next week, and a venue got canceled on us. So I'm trying to, at the last minute, figure out how to have a dinner for 100 people after being told, sorry, you can't use this location. So anyway, so it's been one of those, and then there was another thing involving helping someone today with a personal matter involving the law and community service requirements and things like that. So it's been one of those kind of days. So while my kids were supposed to be getting candy and things like that, and I was supposed to be, using my brain to get not ahead, but get caught up on schoolwork, my brain wasn't focusing. And that's not always a good thing when my brain's not working. So rather than trying to concentrate on stuff I knew I wouldn't be able to follow along anyway, I decided to do something different. Decided to continue reading my new book that I just purchased a couple days ago, Permanent Record by Edward Snowden. All right. So before I give any comments on that, let me go ahead and say I'm not going to give any opinion on it because I honestly don't have a good opinion on it. Probably I'm not the most educated person in things in general, and I'm especially not that educated when it comes to things that require a whole lot of thinking, especially when it's stuff that I don't think about a whole lot anyway. Politics, government, things like that. Okay, but the reason behind the video, as I've been reading this book, I've been thinking about it, just from a Christian perspective. And without rambling too much, let's just look at maybe one or 2 points. Number one, as Christians, what is our responsibility? And I'm thinking in my mind now some verses from the book of Proverbs. He who conceals a matter, it's the glory of kings to search out a matter. Golden rule, doing others. Do I want somebody to search and pry into my life and find everything there is to possibly know about it and tell it to the public? Or as Snowden would say, I think he would argue he didn't actually tell the public. He told journalists, and then the journalists told the public. But anyway. So there's a lot of biblical and theological themes going through my head as I'm reading this book. And just thinking of it from that matter. Now, I really don't have time to be reading stuff like this. I need to be focusing on other things. But sometimes things like this, you got the conspiracy stuff, and to a point I've always been drawn to stuff like that. And then when it just comes to computers and technology, I've enjoyed that for as long as I can remember. And then, you add a good catchphrase to an Amazon selling page. The catchphrase for the book was, I decided to do a very dangerous thing for someone in my position. I told the truth. And, with a gripping statement like that, who could resist clicking on purchase? So, many of you probably know, especially if you keep up with the news, you probably know 10 times more about what he did in 2013 than I do. 2013, I was working a day shift, night shift, swing shift, 3 on, 2 off, 2 off, 3 on type rotation with a wife, staying home with the kids, and 2013 would have been a 4-year-old daughter and 2-year-old twin boys. So my life had very little keeping up with news and politics and recent happenings during those days. So again, my opinion or even knowledge on the background behind this book isn't really all that deep. To start with, as I read this book, he mentioned in the beginning of it about his line of government service in his family. His mother serving our country, his father serving our country, his grandfather serving our country, and then honestly, I knew so little about the situation when it gets to the chapter where he talks about when he swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I didn't even realize that he would have done that. So, very, very interesting. But again, I'm thinking of it, from a Christian point of view. You've got stories of, and I'm not speaking specifically now, so don't read more into this. I'm just speaking broadly. In this world, you have people doing all kind of crazy things. You've got things going on jobs that should not be happening, whether that's big multi-million-dollar jobs or the little rinky-dink job here in Anderson, South Carolina, on a side street off of a 28 bypass or whatever. Local government, big government, sports teams, paying players, and various things. Sadly, it's no different when you get into the church world. I just finished a book, maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, about a famous pastor that would be connected to our denomination, though our denomination says we're not a structured denomination, we're independent. But there was a big wig, or whatever you want to call one of them big name preachers up north. And I read a book about him called The Profaned Pulpit, or A Profane Pulpit, something along those lines, up about First Baptist Church in Indiana. And the point, I think, in that book was sort of similar. When you find out information, what is your responsibility to do with it? And then the question is, well, it depends on what information you have. Is it just dirt on somebody, or bad dirt on somebody, or does it affect other people, or is it just something local that doesn't have an impact or influence on various other people? So there's a lot of things to think about when it comes to situations like that. And as I said, I'm only halfway through this book, so I don't have a very educated opinion on the book or the story behind it or anything. But as I'm reading it, I'm just curious maybe what other people think. I emailed one person who has a fairly well-read blog, just to see maybe if he had any thoughts on it, and I'd hope to hear back from him soon. He has linked in his daily links to the news stories, mainly back in 2014 and a few after that. But it looks like maybe he didn't want to give any kind of opinion on it, and he doesn't live in America anyway. But he linked to some articles, maybe just to educate Christians on the happenings back then. So again, I'm just kind of curious, maybe what some of the few viewers, my channel doesn't get a whole lot of traffic to start with, and a whole lot of comments, maybe a couple comments a week, if that. But maybe you do have some opinions on this. Maybe like me, you're not actually sure what to think. One of the Amazon reviews said something like, I think the top review that shows up, the most liked review or something, it said something along the lines of, some people think he's a traitor, some people think he's a hero. I think probably what I'm going to find out as I get to the rest of the book, and he talks about his subconsciously, but crisis of conscience decision on his 29th birthday. What is he going to do with various information? So again, I in all honesty, I don't even know actually what I'm asking, other than see if anybody may have any thoughts on the matter. So that's that. I'm not really one to give book reviews or anything like that. Most of my reading anyway has to do with the lessons I prepare for the Sunday school class and the young people here at church. I don't really read a whole lot of various modern culture, contemporary culture, things like that anyway. But every now and then I'll get a chance to read something that isn't technically job related. But even in that, you find sermon illustrations and things there. If nothing else, the part he puts in here about young people and how it's an entirely different generation than what people my age, and evidently I think he's about the same age as me. Our age could grow up in a world where you said something stupid, it didn't come back against you, 20 years later. Today we live in a world where somebody in their 20s who is an adult, married, and starting a family, what they were posting on Twitter less than a decade ago, people can still find and bring up against them. I saw a news article about that not too long ago. Somebody tried to do something that was most people would say a good thing, and then because he said something stupid that he had already forgotten about, 8, 9, 10 years ago, people bring it up against you. So anyway, So if nothing else, it's a good sermon illustration for the young people. Don't put any in the days we live in now. Don't put anything online that you don't want people to find, decades later. All right, so if you have any comments on that, if you have any, maybe you've read the book and you have any comments about it from a Christian point of view, I'd love to hear those. If you know more about this matter than I do, which is probably going to be most of you, feel free to chime in how you look at this as from a Christian point of view, biblical point of view. And, if you just have any thoughts in general, as we find ourselves in life in different circumstances, probably not behind the desk of a CIA computer or something like that, but probably we're going to find ourselves in different places where, we think to ourselves, should I or should I not say something publicly about this, that, or the other? And here on October 31st, Reformation Day, I know somebody who maybe had that on their mind 502 years ago when they saw what they perceived as corruption by the authorities and the public being abused by those in authority. They decided to say something. And, at least on this day, 502 years later, we're still thinking about it and talking about it. And, who knows what else in life in the 502 years after that. What are they going to be talking about in the year 2521 or 2515? So feel free to comment, chime in on that if that interests anybody, that topic or anything else. All right, take care. Have a good evening, good Reformation Day, and we will chat with you later. Bye bye.